Welcome, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Largely Mediocre Gaming. I'm Lumper, and I'm here to bring you some more Kerbal space program with crazy creations and cool stuff going on. It's quite a special episode for me today for two reasons. The first is that the 0.22 update for Kerbal space program is coming out either today or tomorrow or yesterday or something. So after this episode, we're getting a new version. I'll be trying out new things, showing you what you can do. I'll be showing you around the new space program. It sounds like they're adding a lot of cool stuff, and I'm really excited for that. The other cool reason is because at some point during this episode, I'll be crossing my 100 hours played on Kerbal, which is exciting for me. I'm loving this game, been with it for a long time now, and it's exciting to sort of hit a big milestone like that. So, without further ado, let's show you what I've been working on between last episode and this one. Now, the first thing I wanted to show you, because I kept promising you that I was going to do something aquatic and involving the sea, and I was going to build a boat or something, is a seaplane. Now, this was a lot more work than I originally thought it was going to be. Here we go. This abomination right here is my seaplane, called the Sea Dog. And there is a lot of complicated crap going on here. I thought this was going to be really simple. I'd stick some buoyant parts on the bottom of a pretty standard plane and it would all work perfectly. But so very many things do not work quite like that. So this is a non-amphibious seaplane. It does require itself to be in the ocean to work properly. But there you go. As you can see, it takes off quite easily from the ocean. Landing is somewhat bloody trickier, if I'm honest. This is also an exceptionally stable craft. As you can see here, if you take a look, we've got two inline reaction wheels. Those are the old versions of SAS for people who are paying attention to the older versions of the game. And because it's got these slightly older reaction wheels on it, or because it's got two of them and it's got the cockpit as well, it can hold itself level really easily. It's also got a lot of control surfaces on the tail. We've got 4 banked up canards, which are like the most cost effective I've found out in terms of control, is use these simple canards. I mean, it's ridiculously stable. I can do a barrel roll in midair, don't even really drop any height. I have at one point tried a flip. I'm not going to now because it was a bit dicey and there's no need to risk it. So as you can see, takes off, pretty fast ship, not quite manoeuvrable, turns nice and tightly. I quite like the look of it as well. I mean, it's pretty, like, it's a bit of a hodgepodge. We've got like this sort of science section on top with all our different measuring devices and a solar panel and a satellite. It's got this sort of weird biplane look going on. We've got these fugly skis, but for some reason I quite like how this craft looks and how it turned out, so I'm pretty pleased. Now I'm going to try and land this ridiculous contraption. That means throttling all the way down, diving. I want to get at least below 100 meters. And then just slowly let the height bleed off. Well, we've got as low throttle as possible. I had a few different aims when I was building this ship. It had to land under throttle because I'm tired of building planes that can only land if I'm using them as a glider. I wanted something that could properly land under throttle, land on the water, didn't need to be amphibious. The reason for this ridiculous design though is good. There are reasons you need to make all this weird crap, and I'll be going through that when I go back to the space plane hangar and show you exactly what is going on with this ship. There you go. And a nice easy landing there. Cut out the engine. And there you go. So let's go back to the Space Center. Okay, resume the flight. I'm apparently still moving. I need to wait for that to not be the case. Come on. Come on, surface velocity, fuck off. Can I go back now? Yeah, there you go. So, that's a space plane, proves it can be done. It took a lot of work though, so let's go in and go over some of the technical issues. Try and explain what the fuck is going on in that ship. Where is it? Sea Dog 1. Okay. got a bit of a cold today, so if my voice is a bit weirder than normal, that's why. It's always pretty bad. So the first thing you'll notice is that in the space plane hangar, this ship is pointing upward, and you're thinking, what the hell? Why have you got your plane pointed forward? Well, as I mentioned, this is not technically an amphibious seaplane. It can only land on the sea. It requires an ocean because it doesn't have any wheels. So if I land on the surface, it scrapes along, loses control, flips off, whatever. That also meant I couldn't take off from the runway as I would normally like to. So I've got this big support column here, and then taking off is a bit of a complicated procedure. I have to build up speed, still attached, and then kick off and take off. It's all a bit difficult, and that's why I didn't bother showing it to you. I mean, it was really dicey when I took off, so there's no point showing you that. But for now, you just want to see the actual plane itself. So let's bring it. Oh, let's undo that. Undo button. I need you, buddy. Oh, god damn it. Let's reload. Undo button doesn't want to work. Okay. Let's take you away and let's have a gander at our plane. So, I'm going to bring up the centre of mass and the centre of lift, and the first thing you'll notice is the centre of lift is really high up. That, though, is not the problem. The problem with a ship like this is that when you're trying to take off from the water, you hit a few different problems. The first is that water in Kerbal's space program is very, very destructive. I mean, you can approach the land at a higher speed than you can land on the water, because if something hits the water, it takes its speed and it pretty much instantly destroys anything that's even slightly over, whereas on the land there's a bit of flex to bounce and there's a bit of sort of room for manoeuvre. Because the water, you can travel into it and it doesn't let you just bounce off or skim on the surface, it's a lot more dangerous. So when I was trying to figure out what the flotation device was going to be, at first I was using the structural fuselage, because I thought, oh, that looks a bit like a space plane, like pontoon thing. You know, it looks sort of like a floating device. I'll use that. But it kept blowing up the moment I tried to land or take off in the water. So that didn't work. I needed something that could withstand a bit more impact. Now, as it turns out, one of by far the highest impact tolerances of any structure in the game are these panels, which have something like 80 impact tolerance. I mean, for comparison, most things aren't running anywhere near that high. You've got these girder segments at around 80, but everything else is around 9s, 10s. I think the highest of all is this structural things. I mean, the fuselage was only 70, things like that. So, something with high impact tolerance. I might try one of these pylons, because if I notice they have 999, which is pretty impressive. But for now, these structural panels will do. Now, the second issue what you run into, now that you've got something that can actually survive landing in the water, is that when you try to take off, the plane pitches forward. Now, I had a few different ideas of how to go around that. The first one was that maybe I just needed to increase the angle of attack as it was resting in the water. So, if you go back in the video to where the watching the sea dog out in the open water, you'll notice that when it's floating, it points quite far up. It's at something like a 45-degree angle. And my thinking was that, oh, if I get it at a high enough angle, I'll be able to take off straight out of the water and it won't be too much of a problem. But the plane has a massive tendency to pitch forward. So the moment you start gunning up the engine, it starts tilting forward. And for a long time I couldn't figure out why, until I noticed that basically the game does take account of there being higher drag in the water. So because you've got these flotation devices sticking on the bottom of your ship, the ones that are highlighted green now, when you try and take off, those create a lot of drag and it pulls the bottom of your plane backward. So the top tries to pitch forward and that gives you issues. The solution to that then was to try and get the centre of mass, the yellow orb as you can see here, above the centre of thrust. The purple orb you can see here pointing backwards. Now, why is that important? Well, because if you get it below, if you get the centre of thrust below this centre of mass, it means it's basically trying to tilt the craft upward, and it's trying to sort of contrast the tilt forward motion of the drag. The other thing that helps out, so basically the big part of this is trying to get everything tilting upward. That's also why I've got all these control surfaces on the back. It's why I've got 2 SAS wheels. So I've got all this complicated stuff going forward. Another good technique is to try and counteract the drag on the bottom by creating as much drag against the air as you can up top. Now, when I looked online at tutorials, I saw people doing this in a few different ways. Some people just had loads of wings up at the top. Some people had like these gear bays. Where are they? Here. Oh, I've done that again. Just keep misclicking. Okay, the game's glitched out a bit. Yeah, some people are using these gear bays like this, and sort of because you can lower them and raise them up, they were using them to create a sort of air brake, which I thought was quite clever. But it struck me that the easiest way was just to pile loads of stuff on top. As so, that's why I've got this big sort of structure with another wing and all this scientific equipment. So that raised the centre of mass up, it raised the centre of the drag up. Quite helpfully as well, an idea I came across, I'm not sure if anyone else has seen this, but if you're trying to create drag for whatever reason, the scientific instruments over here in science have a ridiculous amount of drag for no real reason. I think it's because basically most things have 0.2 drag, like as standard 0.2, 0.2, 0.2, 0.2. You can see it all here, everything has 0.2. So these science instruments weigh almost nothing compared to most components, but they still have 0.2 drag. So just this array on top here is the same as having like a whole another aircraft sitting on top creating drag, which is helpful because then it pulls back on the top of my craft. So with all of that going on, it pitches upward, and then because everything is designed to make it pitch upward, it sort of loses control. And you know, it flips out backwards and then you're screwed. So I had to bring the centre of lift backwards to try and make it tilt forwards and balance everything out. This took a lot of trial and error, a lot of fiddling around with parts and figuring out what worked and what didn't. But it is possible. This is one of the harder things I've done. It took me most of a day working on just building these damn planes to get it to work. But it does function. And I'm really satisfied ultimately with that. I think my next step is I'm going to try and build an SSTO that can work from the ocean. A big one, carry like a big payload, something cool like that. Maybe make it amphibious, maybe even make it a VTOL, I don't know. But I want to work on making something much bigger and a lot more ambitious now that I've sort of figured out the theory behind this. So that is our friend the Sea Dog. I'm just going to use that to maybe explore Kerbin. I'm going to look for some of the cool Easter eggs that have been left around by the developers. The big advantage, of course, is that a seaplane is really quite easy to land in some respects because it's just flat, it's always there. Whereas if you're landing on sort of hills and rough terrain, which is pretty much everywhere else, is dependent on that. Every other like surface on Kerbin is rough and difficult to land on, apart from Kerbal Space Center and the sea. So that's a big advantage in some ways, and I think there's a lot of utility to be gained out of that. I might try sending one to Minmus and seeing if I can maybe make a sort of rocket that lands on the water in Minmus. I don't know. The other cool thing that I want to show you for today, it's called the Drop Dat, because I'm an idiot and I couldn't think of a decent name for this stupid craft. But what you're looking at here is an escape capsule that's capable of falling down from orbit, hitting into the surface of Kerbin, crashing, landing, and surviving without any use of parachutes. So I've been working on this for a very, very, very long time. I started like a couple months ago trying to figure out if there is a way to land a Kerbal back from space without just completely smashing apart. Now, I'd only just noticed when I was recording this that the structural pylons have a lot more impact tolerance than these structural panels. So I might try editing this craft to sort of work those in. I think those could be a big boost to try and make this a bit more rigid. In fact, you know what? I'm going to stick some of these on now. Why not? Let's see what these do for us. How much do they weigh? They weigh a fair bit, but hey. No. Right, okay. So the premise of this craft was quite simple. I was trying to get something that could land and have a Kerbal survive without using parachutes, without using jets, without anything to slow him down apart from the atmosphere and inverted quotes, lithobraking. In other words, crashing into the surface and using that to brake. I need to make sure I've got my Kerbal in the right command pod, which is this top one, not the one at the bottom, which is sort of an artifact from when I was building it. And without any further ado, let's launch this bad boy and hope to God this works. Because this has been very, very dicey and chance based. I'd say about 5 times out of 10 it works and he lands and it's all cool and everything's, you know, cushy, but then the other 5 times out of 10 it just blows up the moment it hits the surface, which is kind of disappointing, and I don't want that to happen while I'm recording. That would be far from ideal. The launching array is pretty like bleeding simple. It's 6 skipper engines, 1 main sail engine, all using the biggest fuel tank, and then I've got these fuel lines running into the middle. It's quite a simple like drop tank build, nothing fancy going on. It's vastly over-engineered. This array would get something much heavier, much further out into orbit. But I just wanted to like save myself any effort on the building. Ooh, that was stupid. I accidentally cut out the engines. I just want to be able to get to like 72,000 meters and be just slightly out of orbit so that I'm not going any faster than I need to be. But yeah, this is a lot more engines than you need for this task. By a long, long way. I mean, I finished this without even ejecting the outside engines. They still have a lot of fuel left. This could easily make it into orbit. So if anyone's looking for a decent first light orbiter design, feel free to steal this. Bill's looking a little scared. How you doing, Bill? You cool in here? Yeah. Bill's my favourite. I mean, Jebediah gets all the glory, but Bill gets things done. I should probably be keeping an eye on my altitude because that's more important than anything else. The other sort of tricksy thing about this is that you need all the atmosphere to slow you down. Like, you need to hit as close to sea level as you possibly can. For the fairly simple reason that then it slows you down more and you are less likely to die. I'm going to tilt slightly away from the ocean just to make sure I'm landing where I want to be. Oh, and I've massively overshot. I wasn't paying attention to the apoapsis. Okay. Whoops. Let's see if I can't try and point downwards and get a bit of a burn off. Come on, point downwards. Point downwards, you stupid thing. I've still got quite a few. I've got a few thousand meters to burn off. Bring the apoapsis down. Come on. Come on, turn around. You stupid ship. Okay, and stop burning. Yeah, that'll do. Then I need to get myself off as far away as possible from the engine, so spin around and decouple now. And because we're spinning, the momentum will send the engines going one way and the pod going the other way, which is super helpful. Hopefully I will still be landing on Kerbal space centre. That would be ideal. I'm not sure that I am though. Okay, it's time to straighten out a bit. Oh yeah, I'm going pretty bloody fast relative to the surface, going this way. That's kind of irritating. Now obviously surface relative speed is what's more important here. You don't really care about orbital speed at all. I mean, why would you? Let's accelerate, let's get us back into the atmosphere, and then we want to be pointing away from the direction of travel. I also want to land at a slight angle rather than straight down. I've noticed in testing this that if I land going straight downward, it has a tendency to sort of bounce the command capsule there so high up in the air when it crashes that it then crashes when it bounces again. Whereas if I have it at a slight angle, it sends the command pod sideways and rolls along the floor rather than straight upward and crashing. I've also got, you might notice, these Communitron 16 like antennae things stuck on the side. The reason for that is because, as I mentioned while I was making the seaplane, I noticed they have a massive drag to weight ratio. So I thought, okay, if I stick a few of these on the outside of the drop pod, then it should help slow it down in the atmosphere. The rest of the pod, as you can pretty much tell, is just entirely constructed out of these panels. I just stacked up loads of them and kept sort of folding them through each other, clipping them together. I have something like, I can go into the map and check actually, let's look at the ship. Yeah, 128 parts, of which all but about 10 are these plates. So 118 of these plates just stacked and clipped together to give us as high of an impact resistance as possible is the idea. And okay, the moment of truth. If we can get to about 110 meters per second, we should survive this. Hopefully. Come on Bill, I believe in you. Look how freaking scared he is. I would be too. You're hitting into the ground at 100 meters per second, Bill. In real life, even if the ship survived, there's no freaking way he would. Oh, slow down, slow down, slow down. Moment of truth. Land it, land it. Yay! Woo! Oh yeah. And it can even roll along the surface. That's ridiculous. Oh, that is brilliant. That is so satisfying when it works. Yeah, so different amounts of it tend to survive each time. I've had most of it survive, or as little as just the command pod rolling along the floor. And as you'll notice, you leave a lot of like debris panels that then you'll have to clear up manually in the space center. But Bill is alive! Yay, look at him! Fallen from space, no parachutes, no rockets, just a really, really sturdy bloody ball. And it actually works, he's now still alive. That is ridiculous. Oh my word. Look at him, you deserve to be happy, Bill. You've survived the most ridiculous freaking thing I've built so far. Oh wow, okay, and you can even get back in. And then keep rolling on. Now this gives me an idea for something, to be honest. Might make a roly-poly rover in the next episode. That does use up a bit of a electric charge, I noticed, but hey, who cares? Bill survived, and I've proven that it's doable. I'm so satisfied. I'm gonna probably stick a few of these on my space centers from now on. I'm gonna have at least one of these little constructions so that I can drop off a Kerbal from the depths of space and have them just smack down. I might also try this with like a hitchhiker pod and see if I can bring 4 Kerbals back alive. There's a few different... I really want to try different variations on this now, but for now, I think that'll be us done. Now, if I've got one more thing to show you that isn't really finished. As I mentioned, I want to build an aquatic base. My plan is to build one so that I can take it to Minimus, the outer moon around Kerbal. And where is it? I may have deleted. Yeah, here we are. So the plan is this big array you can see on top here should float. And I'm hoping to bring something like this to Minimus and try and build an aquatic sea base on there that works. But so far in testing, I'm running into hella issues trying to get this thing to land properly. But for your entertainment, and because this episode is, to be honest, running a bit short unless I do so, I'm going to try and launch it and land it on Kerbal. I mean, I've noticed a lot of this series has sort of taken place on Kerbal because it's just easier to do things that I don't have to get to another planet to show you. I mean, you know, I'd rather do something that I can show you straight away. I launch it and it's already working. But I think it's time we left the comforting nest of Kerbal and headed somewhere a bit more dangerous, a bit more exciting. And that's why we're going to aim for Minimus. So let's try and get this working. SAS on. I have not managed to get this to work once in testing. It has always collapsed or broken, or the launch has gone wrong, or the parachutes have just ripped off. I haven't technically tested this version because I think I've added a few more struts and parachutes and things than the last time I tested it, so this might work. But to say that I'm hopeful would be, well, I'm not. This won't work. Okay, we're over the sea. I don't want to go any higher than this. Let's send everything flying. Whoa, we're over-rotating. Let's just try and spin off. Or not, okay. Come back, 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 come back. Oh, don't over-rotate, don't overcompensate. Let's pop all our parachutes. I've got drogues on the outside and big ones in the middle in the hope that it won't just completely rip apart when it lands, because this weighs quite a bloody lot. And now I guess I can speed up time down to like 600 meters or something whenever it is the big parachutes deploy. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, and there we go. Nice. Bring it down and they deploy at 500. And hopefully it won't tear my ship apart like it has before. No, it hasn't. Wow, for once. That's incredible. Now this design sort of floats and it, you know, it can hold Kerbals and it, you know, looks okay, but doesn't really do much. And if I'm going to make a base on Minimus and have like a permanent operation there, I want to have a lot more stuff going. So that's why I mentioned I want to build a seaplane that can work on Minimus as well, on their sort of little oceans that they have. I want to build it so it can connect to a base like this. I want to have some scientific equipment and, you know, some different arrays and generators and things on Minimus. Whereas right now this is a bit bland. It just sort of holds Kerbals and parachutes and doesn't do much. And it breaks apart when it lands again. Ugh. It's so bloody annoying. But yeah, as you can see, it floats. I don't think I can do much. Once it's landed, there is no moving this now. There's no way in heck this moves. The other issue is that Kerbals can't stand on anything that is itself floating on water. Now, I understand someone's made a mod that fixes that, but I don't like using mods. So, when I do build this base, it's going to have to work entirely with ladders and seats. It's going to be the only way for them to move about. So this is going to be really, really tricky to get to work. But we'll see. We'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. Somehow. Anyway, that's it for today, I think. We've shown you a working seaplane. This, the beginnings of a sea base, you know, the sort of kernel of an idea. And of course, my personal favourite, the sort of ODST drop capsule thing that fell all the way up there from orbit and landed right down on Kerbin without any parachutes. This has been Largely Mediocre Gaming, showing you cool stuff in Kerbal Space Program. Next episode, we're going to try and make it to Minmus, and you know, I'm going to try and figure out a cool way of doing so, something a bit original. But for now, I've been Lumper, you've been a great audience, and I'll see everyone next episode. Bye bye!